Welcome to the second video in our series as we move towards this new service that Paige is launching. Please forgive the casual attire. It's Casual Monday at Pagely. I'll be honest with you though, every day is casual day. Working remote, you can work in your underwear if you want. Some people do, I believe it. Okay, so in part two, we're going to discuss hosting plans from the host perspective as well as kind of the customer's perspective. The building blocks, what goes into it, how it's shaped, how a company like ours makes money, how we may lose money, and some various gotchas where the hosting company may not be giving you a fair shake in terms of overselling or understaffing and things like that. So follow along. We're going to go ahead and break down some of these plans and go from there. All right, here we go. Okay, so for the purpose of this, we're going to use some visuals. And we're going to start with this simple box. This is your hosting plan. This box has four sides and it kind of delineates the amount of resources or value that you're purchasing for your dollars from your host. Now inside of this box goes a bunch of things. And so let's go ahead and walk through them. The first thing in this box is kind of their base infrastructure. These are the compute resources, the platform per se, that kind of needs to be in place at a bare minimum for the host to even provide a service. Also inside of this box, there's a line item for support or DevOps or SecOps. So this is usually folded into the cost of a hosting plan. We as hosts, we make some sort of educated guess that a typical customer is going to use X amount of time of support per month. So we factor that into the hosting plan that we're selling. Okay, so then the next thing is going to be a bucket of consumables. This is storage, bandwidth, CDN, things like that. You typically see these on a hosting plan capped at some point, like 1 terabyte of bandwidth, 5 terabytes of CDN or something. These are kind of variable costs that we have to account for, but we have enough data to understand that most customers generally stay within this range, so we can kind of price it accordingly. But it is factored into the price of the plan on the consumer side. Okay, so those kind of cover the base level components of a hosting plan. Disk, bandwidth, CPU processing power, storage, some support costs. And you can see how it's pretty much roughly a 1-to-1, right? If your plan has 5 terabytes of bandwidth, you're essentially being charged up front for 5 terabytes of bandwidth, whether you use it or not, but it's included in the price. So now let's get to kind of looking at how a hosting company makes money now, because so far it's been kind of a 1-to-1, right? There's no profit or margin or anything. It's just kind of like the base costs. So let's see how gross margin and then net margin comes into play. So this other 40 or 50% of the box, this is what we call expected gross profit, or kind of a gross margin. So we've accounted for the base infrastructure, we've accounted for some support costs, we've accounted for consumables, and we've kind of accounted for some MISC overhead or some fudge factor. Now the rest of this plan, we need to make sure we cover admin costs, sales and acquisition costs, marketing costs. These are other expenses that are kind of not directly related to that particular hosting plan. You know, these are just the things that it takes to run a business. HR, health benefits, 401k, all of that comes out of this kind of expected gross margin block. So this last bit here at the top, this pink area, you know, it may range from 5, 10, to 25 to 35%. This is profit. This is the profit that the company needs to continue to grow its organization, to hire more people, to expand its footprint, etc. Profit's good. Every company needs it because obviously without it, you're not going to be able to grow your business and serve more customers. But you can see how it's kind of variable. If the box is only so big, if a customer uses more support than allocated or more resources than allocated, or your acquisition costs due to competition or something really skyrocket, that's all cutting into your net profit at the end of the day. And the less profit a company makes, the less resources they have available to grow and expand and to ultimately serve their customers. Okay, so that kind of covers the ins and outs of a hosting plan. There's resources that we sell, a profit that's expected to be made. The world goes around and around. You guys buy hosting, we sell hosting, everybody's happy. Okay, so now what happens though? And this goes back to the first video where I'm talking about the tension between a host and a customer. What happens when you as a customer utilize 3 times the amount of support resources allocated? Like, take a look at this right here. So this is an example of a customer that's really gotten upside down on their hosting plan. You know, maybe they're having some sort of support issue or problem with their site, and they were just using a lot of support that month. You can see that it quickly gets to the situation where the host is essentially paying that customer for their business. They're upside down. Nobody's making any money on this. Now, this is totally fine if it's a once in a while sort of thing, you know, maybe once a year. But if this is a repeatable pattern where every other week or every other month the customer is just really driving a lot of support load, this is an untenable situation for the host. And this is where the tension comes in. The host is really going to try to push back and say, hey, you know, you either need to upgrade your plan to buy more resources, in this case support resources, or you need to optimize your code or something so that it stops breaking. Because we can't afford to essentially have you as a customer anymore. So this is perfectly legitimate. Sometimes you're going to get upsold because you need to be upsold. The host can't afford you as a customer anymore, and that's just a fact of life. So in that example, we're pretty much just talking about support, but resources or the base infrastructure is a big driver of this as well. If you have a WordPress site that has a plugin that's just doing some nasty things, like maybe pulling all options on every page load and flushing transients on every page view, or just something that's really slaying the database, you know, pulling a massive table without an index or something, that's really going to cause that hosting plan to just cook. The underlying resources are really going to burn, and they're going to cut into the host's profit quite a bit. And you're going to go to the host and say, why is my site slow? And the host is going to say, well, because you're using 340% of your allocated resources, perhaps you should consider an upgrade. And you're not going to like that because you know, you feel like you should be getting what you're paying for. And that's totally understandable. Little secret, though, from a guy who's looked at thousands and thousands of websites, 99.5% of the time, it's the code. It's your software that sucks. The reason why your site is slow is your site. So I hope the box analogy made sense. As long as all those components stay relatively in balance, everybody's happy. So here's something to consider though, and this is kind of the dark underbelly of hosting a little bit. There's only 2 things in that box that a host can absolutely control, and that's the base infrastructure cost and the support costs. And so an unscrupulous host, they're going to skimp on those things. They're going to put you on a shared setup or no-name cloud architecture, or just way oversell the platform so that they can maximize the profit of those plans by lowering the infrastructure cost or spreading that infrastructure cost out a lot across too many customers so they can maximize their profit. The second thing they'll do is they'll really skimp on support. They'll, you know, you call support, you get the $8 an hour intern who's reading a script, you know how the story goes. So those are 2 components of that box where a host company can really screw you. And that's kind of, I think, what drives so much animosity between hosts and consumers. Now at Pagely, we've really prided ourselves on using the best infrastructure, Amazon. It's expensive. If you saw my bill, you'd cry. It's expensive because it's the best. And we really pride ourselves on the support side. We run what is called a tierless support desk. Everybody you talk to in Pagely is a junior engineer or better. They have SSH access. They can get in there. They can actually fix your problem the first time. And that's why our pricing at Pagely tends to be on the high side. If you have the best infrastructure with the best people and a healthy expectation of profit, that's how you end up with a $500 hosting plan. Now there's something to be said about value as well. Is $500 of value to every customer? To some of it, it's a bargain. To some customers, it's outrageous. It really just kind of depends on what your site's needs and goals are. We tend to cater to customers where $500, $5,000, or even $50,000 a month for hosting is a bargain, because the value they get in return to able to run their entire organization, their business unit, to hit their marketing and revenue goals, that value that we deliver for that fee, it's just a line item. And essentially all customers just want to maximize value. Whether they're a large customer or a small customer, they just want to get the most for their money. So that takes us back to the beginning. Now that you and I, through this video, are on the same page on what kind of a traditional hosting plan looks like, the box with the components, whether you go outside the box, etc. Now we can deconstruct that and figure out ways to improve it. There's a lot of room in the traditional hosting model, the way it's priced, the way it's presented, for massive improvement that I think can deliver customers additional value and make sure hosts like us keep a healthy profit margin. There can be a win-win scenario here, I think. And so as we move forward towards the launch of our new service, we're going to kind of explore that aspect a little bit more. And so I want to thank you for watching this one. Thank you for joining me on Casual Mondays. And we'll see you again soon. Thanks.